At the sound of this alarm, Taiwan scrambles its fighters and deploys missile defense systems. It means Chinese fighter jets have entered Taiwan's Air Defense Identification Zone, or ADIZ. Across the Taiwan Strait, China's ruling Communist Party has maintained the position that Taiwan is not a country and has made it clear that it seeks to unify the island with the mainland. It has not ruled out the use of force.
To put pressure on Taiwan, China frequently sends not just fighter jets, but helicopters, radar planes, and even bombers into this area known as the ADIZ, or Air Defense Identification Zone. Most of the Chinese aircraft enter the southwestern corner near Pratas Island before they circle back. A country's ADIZ serves as a security buffer zone which extends beyond its territorial airspace. Territorial airspace includes anything within 12 nautical miles of a country's land, but areas outside of a country's boundary are classified as international airspace. Gerald Brown, a Washington-based defense analyst, explains that ADIZs didn't exist until after World War II.
The United States established the first one in 1950 and then helped establish several other ones throughout the Indo-Pacific region, namely Philippines, Taiwan, South Korea, and Japan, around 53 if I recall correctly. But largely it's just that buffer to provide that little bit of security benefit. So usually when aircraft are entering, then they are required to identify themselves, file their flight plan before going over entering an air defense identification.
As these identification zones are not bound by international law, there are no common guidelines to define a breach, and so every country has their own protocols. In the East China Sea, South Korea, Japan, China, and Taiwan's ADIZs all overlap. But this doesn't necessarily lead to a scrambling of fighter jets unless an entering aircraft is suspected of having ill intentions or threatens invasion, which is often the concern between China and Taiwan.
Because it's this kind of weird gray area, it can often be used as a form of what we call gray zone warfare, right? Basically putting military pressure on an adversary that's beneath the threshold of conflict. So it's not quite as escalatory as entering a actual territorial airspace, but it is escalatory enough where you can put military pressure on a state without crossing lines.
It's those lines that put Taiwan in a difficult position when enforcing its defense zone. A large portion of Taiwan's ADIZ sits over China, and as the PRC, or People's Republic of China, reinforces its ownership, there are calls for Taiwan to reconsider its ADIZ.
I think there are two meaningless things in this case. One, it doesn't make any sense to establish ADIZ covering mainland, in which Taiwan cannot really control the airspace. Two, as the PRC's airplanes, civilian or military, get into the area frequently without informing Taiwan, and Taiwan does nothing and cannot do anything in response to those or to that. In this case, I think that Taiwan needs to re-establish its ADIZ and set a new system to fit in reality.
With China expected to ramp up its so-called gray zone tactics, Taiwan is looking to minimize the effects on its hardware by shifting to a more advanced missile and tracking system.
I think that's likely the smart move, because that's going to take a lot of pressure off of the Taiwanese Air Force. Constantly scrambling planes to respond, it's just wear and tear on the airframes, right? There's a lot of costs involved in that. There's, it adds up.
However Taiwan responds to Chinese activity, the island is closely watching its ADIZ, determined to better manage its national security and protect its sovereignty. Damon Lin and Jaime Ocon for TaiwanPlus.